Yeah. Courtyard. All right. Well, let's get rolling here. Welcome to the 2025 Kansas Sentencing Commission Workshop. It's a pleasure to be here with you all. Thank you for those joining us by Zoom or whatever platform we're using. Appreciate that. I always like Judge Fowler, who was my predecessor, always made a point. Our mantra or our task, our marching orders are contained on page 2 of that agenda. And it's set forth by statute. The legislature tells us what our task is. And within 2 years of when the projection is we're going to be out of bids, we have to go through some analysis and have to make recommendations. Riding on the elevator up with Dr. Gruby this morning, I said, we're looking at 28, right? And he goes into 28, 29. So while we're not within 2 years, we're knocking on the door. So now's the time to bring in outside the box. This is a safe place to talk. So I want free flow of information, ideas, have them, bring them forth. You never know what's the key to unlocking the door, pardon the pun. With that, Scott, you have some announcements you want to make?
I do. And thank you, Judge, and welcome everybody. Thanks for being here. This is a kind of a culmination of our legislative committee that gets together and talks about current trends and things that we wanted to bring forth to the commission. And so what you're going to see today is a culmination of that. You do have some announcements in your folders. I wanted to go over those just a little bit. First of all, thank you to Secretary Zamuda for allowing us to be here again. We've used this space several times, and it's a great space for us to be able to have discussions. And so thank you for that. The restrooms, please feel free to use those at any time, are just straight back and just keep walking through the door. Those of you who, it's my understanding that are virtually can hear us, and that if you have those of you that are here in the space, if you do have your laptops on, if you would mute those, it actually messes with the capabilities that we have here. Those of you that are online, we do have all of the materials on our website. Simply go to the homepage, go to resources and presentations, and we do have a 2025 section for the workshop. The Wi-Fi, if you're needing it, is listed over there on the corner of co-guest is what you're looking for if you need that. We do have parking reimbursement for members, so get with Brenda if you need that. Lunch will be served. We're having the lunch buffet. We'll be over in the Senate room of Jayhawk Tower. We do have refreshments. Please feel free when you need to get up and get those. We have drinks in the fridge as well. When we go over for lunch, if you want to grab a drink, we do have water over there. But if you want another drink, please grab something from the fridge before you go. So other than that, we're excited to go ahead and finish up. I think we've got meeting minutes and approval of the agenda, and then we'll go ahead and get started with the first session.
Are there any objections to the agenda? If you've all received the same? If not, the agenda will be approved. Minutes, the minutes of the August 21st, 2025 meeting. Are there any additions or corrections? Or do I have a motion to approve?
So moved.
Second.
Motion and seconded. Any discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, same sign. Motion passed. Scott?
Our first session is talking about uses of Artificial Intelligence and Machine Learning for Sentencing Commission. This is hopefully will be a very informative section for us to talk about something that is in our face at this point. And whether we like it or not, it is here. And so I have some wonderful presenters today that are going to talk with us about that, give us a little bit more information about how AI and machine learning can actually be used in the context of criminal justice. Jonathan Wroblewski is here with us. He actually is a Harvard professor, but he also is now moved across the country to California and Stanford, and is actually taken up residence there. Dr. Eli Alajar is with RAND Corporation. He has extensive knowledge in this area. Kimberly DeWitt will actually be here in person. She's here with us today. She is the state's chief data officer, and then you'll get the leftovers at the end with me. So with that, I'll turn it over to Jonathan, and we'll go ahead and get started.
Thank you so much, Scott. Can you hear me okay, Scott?
Yes.
Okay. Good morning, everyone, from sunny California. Actually, it's not sunny yet because the sun hasn't come up. My name is Jonathan Wroblewski. I'm a lecturer at Harvard Law School and Stanford Law School. But for most of my career, I was a government lawyer. I'm thrilled to be here and to be part of this. It's a great panel of experts that Scott put together to talk about really an important issue in criminal justice and for sentencing commissions in particular. Just so you know a little bit more about my background and candidly what I know and what I don't know. Over the last 40 years, I have been a prosecutor, a public defender. I ran a policy office in the criminal division of the United States Department of Justice in Washington for more than 15 years. And as part of that job, I was the Attorney General's representative on the United States Sentencing Commission for more than 10 years across many different administrations. I'm a lawyer. I'm not a data scientist, but I've hung around sentencing commissions. I've taught sentencing in a number of different law schools. I've been around the issue for many years, and I have a pretty good idea of what commissions do. Scott put together this panel this morning to explore how artificial intelligence, machine learning, and related technologies are already beginning to reshape the operations of government, and in particular, sentencing commissions, courts, and other criminal justice agencies. If you want more information, because we're really just going to scratch the surface today, in a few weeks, the Federal Sentencing Reporter, which is a journal published by Duke University Press, and it's a journal for which I'm one of the managing editors, we're going to be publishing a double issue on artificial intelligence and criminal justice. I had the great pleasure of editing that issue and working with some really very thoughtful authors who are grappling with the way the new technology is impacting criminal justice and how the impact is going to likely evolve into the future. So if you want to delve deeper, there's going to be more materials on that, and there's just a lot to learn about all of this. As Scott mentioned, I'm spending this semester at Stanford Law School. I'm teaching 2 classes, sentencing, and a policy class on AI and criminal justice. And we're exploring in the AI class how governments at different levels might deploy AI products in criminal justice, but also how they might regulate the use of AI in criminal justice. And I think recognizing both of those things is really important. There is a cycle with technology and regulation, and it strikes me that we're right now in the early parts of that cycle for AI. And when you're in the early parts of that cycle, companies are racing to deploy products. They want to make a lot of money, and they see lots and lots of opportunities. And there are some that are devising specific use cases for AI in criminal justice. Now, when that happens, the companies don't come to regulators or the government. They go straight to the end users who are going to buy the product. And those end users often have very little capacity to fully understand how the technology is developed and what are its strengths and weaknesses. Let me give you one particular example. About 18 months ago, there's a company called Axon. Some of you may have heard about it. It used to be called Taser International. It has a $60 billion market cap. It's traded on the stock exchange. And they came out with a product. By the way, they make body-worn cameras as well as tasers and lots of other technology. They came out with a product that would use body-worn camera audio and tie it to artificial intelligence to produce in an instant a police report from that audio. Police officers and police departments, as you might imagine, were absolutely thrilled because it saves lots and lots of time. It might take a police officer an hour and a half to write a police report, even on a simple case, and now it could be done in seconds. And it, of course, saved officers from the part of the job they hated most, which, of course, is just sitting in front of a computer and writing that police report. So all good, right? It turns out that some prosecutors and defense attorneys and judges voiced some concern with this technology. Those concerns revolve around accuracy, transparency, the training of the AI model, bias, and a lot more. It strikes me that to properly determine whether and when and to what extent to deploy this particular use case requires a lot of expertise, both on computer science and in the criminal justice system and the values that underlie both. And candidly, that regulatory filter is just right now not there for most governments in most places across the country. Now, there has been an awful lot of hyperbole about how AI is going to change everything, how it's going to take all of our jobs, how it's going to upend all aspects of civilization. And of course, there's been a lot of fear around AI that the robots are coming for all of us. They're going to take all of our jobs. They're going to end up as our overlords, and that we're all doomed. Now, I can't speak to which one of those predictions or might be right, but as Scott said, one thing is for sure, and that is that AI is here now, and it's almost certainly going to be changing the landscape of working with words and ideas and data in profound ways. And if that's right, sentencing commissions are in many ways the sweet spot for AI because their work, commission work, involves data and law and advocacy and judicial reasoning. Much of that is expressed in words, and they often intersect with algorithms and risk assessment tools. Part of our job is identifying unwarranted sentencing disparities. And so AI, I think, is going to be part of our work in the years ahead. And it's already increasingly part of the criminal justice process, from policing to corrections. And it's an increasingly important part of that process. And so I think that to be an effective advocate, an effective jurist, an effective probation officer, or other criminal justice professionals, and especially if we're going to be effective policymakers now and into the future, we're just going to need to understand these tools, how they're used, and how they might be regulated and governed. And that's why I think Scott suggested that we should have this panel. Now, as I mentioned, we're going for another 45 minutes or so. And so in those 45 minutes, we're just going to scratch the surface. But I think it's really important that we do so and to get leaders in the community to be thinking about all of this. And the speakers that Scott has collected is going to do that. We're going to examine some of the regulatory steps that are already being taken. Some of the speakers are going to talk about some of the applications of AI across the criminal justice system and some of the considerations that are important to keep in mind as these products roll out. And we're going to talk about some of the practical applications of AI that enhance staff capacity and support data-driven decision-making. I'm not here as a total cheerleader for AI, and I'm not here as an AI skeptic. I just and some of the dangers involved in their deployment so that we can address those dangers and just take advantage of the improvements. We're going to try to highlight how these tools are being used and can be used to securely process data for developing sentencing guidelines and conducting research, and also some of the considerations that should be carefully considered before deploying AI tools. So here's the way we're going to proceed this morning. You've now had my little introduction, and we're next going to hear first from Kimberly DeWitt. Kimberly is the Chief Data Officer and works in the Kansas Office of Information Services. She's going to discuss some of the ways her office is addressing AI technology across platforms in Kansas. After Kimberly, we'll hear from Ellie Alhajar. Ellie is a senior scientist in the Engineering and Applied Sciences Division at the RAND Corporation. Ellie is leading various projects at the intersection of AI, cybersecurity, and government. He will discuss the use of AI in the broader criminal justice community, including its potential to improve efficiency, accuracy, and fairness, and also some of the concerns and pitfalls that we have to be aware of around the use of AI. And then finally, Scott, as you know, the executive director of the Kansas Commission, will talk, and he'll talk about how AI and other technology is already being deployed and explored, first at the Kansas Commission around the collection and dissemination of sentencing data. And then he'll also talk about how other commissions, including the U.S. Sentencing Commission, are beginning to explore the use of AI in their work. And after we hear from the panel, hopefully we'll have some time for questions among the panelists and with the audience. So I think with that, I'm going to stop. And Kimberly, I'm going to turn it over to you.
Great. Hello, everyone. My name is Kimberly DeWitt. I am the inaugural Chief Data Officer for the state of Kansas. I have been here since November, so I'm coming up on our first year. So thank you for having me today, Director Schultz, and I'm happy to come and speak with you all. So what I would like to talk a little bit about today is what we are currently doing in our local government to start to congeal around AI. So before I came, AI is a bit of a taboo subject. It really ranges the spectrum of folks being fearful and terrified because they don't understand what AI is, what it can do. Or you have folks who exist in that shadow AI world where you're going to use ChatGPT every day, whether your boss tells you that you can or not. So as I come into this role, one of the key things that I've begun to figure out in interacting with folks and agencies and people is that we really need to create a space to talk about AI. And AI has a lot of components. There's a security component to it. There's an operational component of what are we actually doing with it. There's a legal component. How do we create defensible positions for how we utilize AI? There's also a data component, which is a core function of AI. If you are putting in garbage, unguarded, low quality data into an AI system, it's going to give you that back out in some form or another. So there's many different conversations that we need to have around AI that now that I am here, now that I can help be a better advocate for data and for AI as a concept and as a whole, I'm hoping that we can start to create those spaces and start to have those conversations. Because as Mr. Roblowski mentioned earlier, technology is here. AI is here. These things are going to continue to invade our space. And unless we become proactive in addressing technology and addressing AI, we are either going to stay behind or AI is going to start negatively impacting us because we're not pushing back against it to properly manage it. So what I'd like to talk a little bit about today is what my office does. My office, the Enterprise Data Org, we call it the Office of Collective Intelligence. So I am based in executive IT. And there is a small profile sheet in your folders that will tell you a little bit more about all the great things we're working on, what some of our current initiatives are. I wanted to touch on our top 3 current initiatives. So one being, forgot one point. So one thing about collective intelligence that you all need to know is that we are building a very transparent organization, which is very different in government, where you have a lot of silos and things of that nature. But within the data space, data is a great unifier of people, process, and environment. So the organization that I'm building is meant to be transparent so that we can create spaces for things like AI to be able to have holistic thoughtful conversations, have holistic, thoughtful solutions that we can build. You can only build that in spaces where everyone has an equal seat at the table. So whether you're a lowly data analyst or an agency secretary or anything in between, everyone has a spot in collective intelligence to be able to come and contribute to the data space as a whole. So some of our current initiatives that we're currently working on are three main strategic ones. One being enterprise data governance. So as you're aware, every agency, every team within our government utilizes data every day. We are all data professionals, whether you officially have that title or not. We are also creating a lot of data every day, every month, inside of our agencies, outside of our groups. We drip data every day. So one aspect of the role that I have to fulfill is to help us to better manage our data as a strategic asset, as a financial asset, as a marketing asset, and all of those great ways that we can maximize the use of data across the board. So one of those ways that we go about that is very simply governance. And governance right now is at the local level. So agencies, teams, depending on your level of data maturity, you may be doing really great things with managing your data. You may be having conversations around, if we're changing a data set, are we documenting that? Do we know where our data is going? Do we know where it's being used? Do we have proper AI documentation when we want to turn on that bright, shiny object that we're using data for? So we run the spectrum here at Kansas government. We have some agencies that are doing really well, and we have other agencies that need a little bit of work. So my job is to help bridge that gap and help us all rise together. Because in that space of being holistic, if we're all doing better individually, then our ability to conquer bigger things like AI is going to become a little bit more approachable. Our second strategic initiative that we're working on is what I call AIR. So that is our AI Innovation and Resource Hub. So I consider AI, the very base of AI, it's a data-driven technology. And so I feel it very important that my office takes some ownership, thought ownership, and operational ownership of how we approach AI across our government. And also create those spaces for the other stakeholders that also exist in the AI space, like our legal folks, like our security folks, like our technology folks. We need process. We have a lot of agencies and teams that are out here doing things with AI. But what we don't have is consistent process. What we don't have is a roadmap. What we don't have is spaces where if you need help, if you need resources, if you need education, you have a place to go. So that is going to be the focus of AIR. We're working on creating roadmaps. We're working on creating process. We're working on creating a center of excellence across our government, regardless of your branch, that you can come, get educated, get information, and potentially even get resources to help you on your AI journey. So some of the projects that we're working on within AIR is our AI policy. So we're going to talk about that in a moment. But we're also creating some guidelines. We're also collecting AI inventory that's completely voluntary right now. We're just for information gathering purposes. Tell us what AI things you're working on. Not that we want to know from a big brother perspective, but we want to know how we're using AI across our government so that we can find better ways to create process. If one agency conquers a chatbot, we all should be able to conquer a chatbot. So the best way to do that is if we're transparent in our use. Our third strategic initiative is around foundational data policy. So as I mentioned before, I'm the inaugural Chief Data Officer. So we had very little data-related policy within our government. So this year, we're working on, for 2025, we're working on 4 main ones: data governance as a whole, AI, metadata management, and quality management. Foundational things meaning as you start to focus on quality, that means that the nature of your data gets better. What you are able to use it for gets better. Same thing with metadata. Metadata is simply data about data, so information about your data sets. For us to consistently and holistically be able to better utilize data across government with each other, we have to know what each other has. We have to know what we have across the board. And then in 2026, we're going to be dipping into deeper topics. So we're going to be talking about data sharing across agencies and also externally. That also touches on open data and sharing, defining our data sets in a way that we can share them with the public, of which some of our agencies already do. We're also going to be talking about retention, categorization, and classification, And then our last one will be privacy. So we're going to be getting into some meaty topics over the next 2 years with the goal that regardless of the technology that you're using, regardless of the buzzword, if we stick with AI as the buzzword for today's topic, AI impacts all of these focus areas. And it's also vice versa. As we start to get policy in place, these policies also affect how we engage with AI. So it's an interdependent relationship, of course. So Mr. Wroblewski was talking earlier about the crossroads of regulation and government action. Well, there's very little. Governments tend to fall behind in terms of policy and legislation in terms of the AI space. So that only creates gray areas where vendors can come in and sell you all bright, shiny objects. But the negative aspect of that is that internally, we don't have the education. We don't have the ownership. We don't have those common spaces where we can lean on each other as experts, lean on each other as a government to be able to properly push back and lead conversations with vendors. So they end up selling us bright, shiny objects that we don't understand how they work. And they tend to get us in trouble later. So some of these policies will help to, between AIR and the policies that we're working on, we're seeking to help to close that gray area. So I wanted to drill in a little bit about our AI policy and some of the things that we're working on. Oh, I'm sorry, please.
Yeah. What are we gonna do about the fact that a lot of us use ChatGPT? And we ask a question about something in state government, and it'll give us a nice little answer and an option to look at five other things. But I don't know that the information that you get is coordinated between agencies or accurate. And it's so easy to use ChatGPT. Why would I want to go online to an agency department to drill down through, wait a minute, what are they doing about changing licenses for people over 75? What are they, da-da-da-da-da-da? I'll just ask ChatGPT. I mean, and that's what's happening right now. How are we going to interact with that to make it better so that the people who do talk to chat, the first, what did they say, 100 million joined in the first month? I mean, or first, whatever, 2 months or something. What are we going to do about the fact that there now is AI accessibility and you can ask questions about state government, and I don't know if it's complete and anyway, you know what I'm asking.
I do, yes. And that's a great question. So first and foremost, ChatGPT is a public business. They can only pull public information. They're pulling information, scraping information from websites, from data sets that they purchased, from Facebook, from social media, all of these public sources. They do not have input into our internal systems. So when you want to talk about licensing, for example, they're not looped up to our internal enterprise licensing platform to actually give you valid information. They're pulling information from publicly available sources. So I think that is a key piece of understanding that we need to understand about things like ChatGPT and Copilot, even Copilot as well, is that on a very simple level, they're looking at public information. Internally to government, so within our agencies, within our teams, we have the opportunity, very much to the point that you're talking about, if we want to control the narrative of what information and what gold sources we're providing to the outside world, to our public constituents, agencies within government have to take that ownership of their AI space. So that if we want folks to come to the Board of Cosmetology and treat that as the place to get information and not use ChatGPT, then that means that us as government needs to create the tools and the spaces and the resources so that the Board of Cosmetology can create the right space so that people can properly engage and be able to ask those questions. So there's a duality to this as well, in that right now, the longer that government, as long as we remain reactive instead of proactive, we force people to go use ChatGPT. We force people to engage in shadow AI and engage in shadow IT, which is basically doing things behind the scenes, not keeping it visible, doing things on your local computer and not saying anything. We force folks to do that because there's not a pathway that we create within government to give them the right tools to use. So that is I figure, I don't want to sound negative, but it's an opportunity for us as government to lean into technology is here. We know that our folks inside of government and also our constituents are using public sources to get information about the things that normally you would come to us for. So it is our opportunity to take control of that. It is our opportunity to start to build better structures and be proactive, get in front of it so that we can start to control the narrative of how folks engage with the government, how they continue to engage with government in the future. Does that answer your question?
It does. Thank you very much.
Hopefully in a diplomatic manner. Any other questions? Okay, let's get into our current AI policy draft. So I will be transparent in saying that our policy is in draft form right now. Because of the transparency of OCI, everybody pretty much knows about it because we've been seeking feedback from all over the place in terms of how we can continue to improve this policy, how it can be applied, use cases, all kinds of good things. So some pieces I wanted to bring out about our AI policy is that we lean into, as a data org, I lean into AI, I lean into technology, but I also lean into process. I also lean into, let's have conversations. Let's not avoid risk. Let's talk about risk and manage risk. The things that we're concerned about, let's talk about those things so that we can properly address them and not wait for them to bite us in the butt. So our policy is built in such a way that we encourage you to embrace AI. We encourage you to go out and be curious, go explore. But I term it responsible curiosity, because we are also saying AI is great. It's a wonderful, bright, shiny object, but don't just go out there and do stuff. Be responsible about it. Talk about risk, build procedures, build documentation, talk about human in the loop. Do those very tangible things so that we can minimize the risk to both you and to government as a whole. Because if one team, one agency implements AI and there's some major breach, it ruins it for everybody. And that's not at all what we want. So some key features around the AI policy is that we focus on one of the key factors of what's most important to how all of our agencies and all of our teams utilize AI, which is using sensitive information, of which we have 3 different types right now. Basically information that is not appropriate for public release, restricted use information, which is a very specific Kansas term, and then also confidential information. So most of our sensitivity comes from PII, FTI, all kinds of sensitive information, CJIS data, things of that nature. So for us to say to an agency, we want you to be able to utilize AI, we're not saying don't use AI. We're saying be responsible about it. So as part of, once we define that we're focusing our AI policy on the most sensitive pieces of information that we possess as a government, then we talk very simply about how can we use it? Because we recognize there are valid use cases that every agency has that they want to be able to use their sensitive information that they collect to be able to use it to use AI to complete operational tasks. So we talk about these very simple, these 4 things that have to be in place for you to be able to utilize sensitive information within your models and within your AI applications. So basically, it doesn't need to keep it. All of the middle part of the calculating and all the analysis that AI does, it needs to get rid of all of that. We always need to be able to delete or remove any of the inputs or the outputs. And then lastly, we keep a log. We need to know what our AI is doing. Because ostensibly, even within your agency, your secretary, your boss, your manager, an outside stakeholder wants to know what you're doing with AI. We should always be able to keep track of that information. So with these 4 things in place, we feel like we are able to start building a baseline for how you use sensitive data inside of groups, agencies, things of that nature. And then another piece of our policy that we want to talk about is that is the literacy and the education piece of AI. So we tend to think that AI is a gold source, and it is not. AI is not God. It is not. It is an encyclopedia of a term, but it is not the end all be all answer. AI performs a task via a prompt, via an input. That does not mean that whatever it throws out at you is always 100% correct. And the way that our society works, we tend to trust technology versus be skeptical of it. And when AI is in place here, there's always that certain level of, to a person, to the average user of AI, who may not be a tech person, you may not be an IT person. You may be someone like our friend over here who just uses ChatGPT and asks it a question. That's okay. But the other side of that we need to really hone in on, especially in government, is that the human in the equation never goes away. There is always that need to make sure that whatever AI is doing, that we are an active participant in that process. So whatever those outputs are, we still need SMEs and experts in that space to look at this AI output and say, yes, this is what we expected. Or no, this is not what we expected. Well, why? AI is not going to be able to tell you why it gave you the answer that it gave that didn't meet your expectations. But the human in the loop, the human who knows their space, who knows their area, can tell you. So in some ways, when we talk about AI, we drill on this a lot because we're very concerned that AI is going to replace our SMEs, they're going to replace our jobs. We're going to remove the need for human interaction. And I absolutely disagree with that. I believe that our human interaction only increases because we need to have a level of skepticism to make sure that AI is doing exactly what we ask it to do. So between these three factors of our AI policy, the rest of it talks a lot about principles. Because as I mentioned, we're all data professionals. So we all have a level of responsibility to be a data guardian. So that means that we always need to be educated and always keep that frame of reference in mind as well. So I will end briefly by saying, thank you for having me. It was a pleasure. And my contact information is here. I'm happy to talk about anything data related, all things AI. And as I mentioned, my organization is completely transparent. So if there are ways that you want to engage in the data space or be a participant or be a stakeholder, I'm happy to have you. Thank you. Oh, any questions? Okay.
Thank you, Kimberly. Just so you know, I have a couple of questions, but I'm going to hold off because I want to make sure we have time for Ellie and Scott, and then hopefully we will, because I would like to talk to you. If we don't, I will email you. But Ellie, let me turn it over to you.
All right, a quick sound check. All good?
We can hear you.
Yeah.
All right, awesome. All right, good morning, everybody, and thank you for having me. And Scott, thank you for the invitation. I'm going to be talking a little bit general points here about the use of AI in criminal justice, what can be done, what cannot be done today, what should we look for, guardrails, safeguards, and things of that nature. I'm going to start by my comments by saying AI in criminal justice is not about replacing judgment. And that's the big, bold statement I'm going to start with. It's about giving people better information at the right time. And I think this is the key that this should be the takeaway from my whole spiel here, is that we are not trying to replace it. We're not trying to put AI to make judgments. And if we do so, we are failing as in our duty as humans in keeping justice. So AI what I'm going to talk about how AI can improve accuracy, fairness, and efficiency across the life cycle of the criminal justice. If we pair it with the right guardrails, with a lot of the transparency that Kim talked about, and then the human oversight as well that was mentioned before. So I'm going to start by saying, right now, what can AI do? I always like to say, every time I give a similar talk, I always say, like, AI of today. And the reason I'm saying that is because by the time I give the next talk, ChatGPT 6 might be out. or a new AI technology, a new paradigm will come out. So it is very hard to project in the future. And what I'm going to talk about today is what AI technology of today can do. I'm going to stick to four main points. I would like to think about AI helping us in data hygiene and integrations, things like deduplicating records, reconciling aliases, misspellings, running automated data quality checks, and things of that sort. What we get out of this, we get cleaner inputs for guideline studies, we get recidivism analysis, we get disparity reviews, and things of that nature. Second point is the document drafting and review. NLP or natural language processing, systems that draft memos, they summarize case laws, they check citations, they even autocomplete sometimes your worksheets if you have them set up in a certain way. So this would reduce like the boilerplate work, what Jonathan was mentioning, like the mundane part that we have to go through. A third pillar is the evidence and transcript triage. Think about the most like one of I would say the breakthroughs the past couple of years was how AI transforms speech to text. Think about every meeting you attend, and then you have the AI prompter or the AI transcriptor that takes my voice and then makes it into a bunch of notes. Again, I caveat that with, just think about someone like me with a weird accent. You can get some goofy stuff, but in general, things of that nature, which I would consider breakthroughs. And for our justice system, we can think about services for calls, hearings, body cameras, combining that with video analytics to basically surface relevant segments quickly. So we're accelerating our discovery using those tools. And one more thing I'll talk about is the analytic decision support. It's basically creating dashboards to report error rates, to calibrate, and to distinguish subgroup disparities that are being used in our tools. Think about risk screens and things of that nature. This is what I would consider the four main points or four main pillars that AI today can help us with. This is not speculation. This is already, there are many cases where this has been used with fairly good success rates. So we are using that technology today. I want to move on now to talk about the three things I mentioned: the accuracy, fairness, and efficiency. Starting with accuracy here. Accuracy to me means doing the technical homework. So one thing we need to think about is external validation before deployment. So whatever models you decide to do, whether it be building it from scratch or whether it be purchasing it from a vendor, it should be tested on your local data, on your recent cohorts, and reporting all these, speaking of transparency, reporting all these results or these successes with your confidence intervals as you go. Another point is error analysis that actually matters. It's not only about tracking false positives, it's about false positives and false negatives. So keeping those two coming together and how they change by demographics, how they change by charge category, etc., etc. Then I would talk about robustness and drift monitoring. Always conduct routine checks for data or population drift. So even if your model is deployed, that is not just guaranteed to function same thing untouched forever. It has to be monitored for any type of population drift that is happening or data drift. Any triggers that as new laws change, as new data as your data gets skewed, make sure your model is still working appropriately. And finally, I would say the explainability for practitioner. Yes, a technical person like me, I understand how the models work. I understand what's happening under the hood, etc., etc. But now we're talking to our fellow, the practitioners, our colleagues. always provide plain language. Why this recommendations? Why did I come up with this recommendation? Not just because, oh, well, the model told me so. It's having that bridge between the model to why should I care? Why does it matter? The explainability to practitioners. This is a big key. Moving on from accuracy, I'll move to fairness now. We heard the word governance a little bit ago, and I'm going to talk a little bit about what kind of guardrails and governance that should be in place for our work here. One, I would say, define fairness upfront. Before you deploy your model in criminal justice, what does fairness mean to you? You need to select fairness metrics. What are the calibration, the error rate parity, the predictive parity, things of that, and acknowledge inherent trade-offs. As we know, these models are we call that stochastic by nature. There is no guaranteed that if-then statements. So acknowledge that there is a trade-off happening there and see what is your level of risk, what is your confidence interval that's happening there. Use disparity testing as a routine. Do some due process and contestability as you go. For example, notify parties when AI-informed assessment are used. This is also a big key. Like, if you are using any kind of law, we always cite that law. We always cite that what we're referring to, what article, what paragraph, what section. When you're using AI to make a decision or to help your decision, be transparent about it. Make sure that you are informing whoever is reading that this is AI assisted work. So whether it's right or wrong, it's not about like who takes credit. It's about keeping that transparency and this fairness going through. And finally, I would say the human in the loop by design. And we heard that already. It's my favorite quote is AI suggests, but ultimately people decide. And personally, I would like that to keep going as we go. AI is suggesting, but we are deciding. We are the ones at the end, whether it's me as a technical person or my fellow policy researcher or the judge or the lawyer, or people are deciding, especially in criminal justice. Require documented rationale when overriding high impact recommendations, and think about things like release, detention, departures, all things of that nature. Moving on, I'm going to talk a little bit about efficiency. This is a something that Jonathan started, alluded to in the beginning, is staffing and workflow, and not headcount cuts. Again, I'm going to keep reminding you, I'm framing everything I'm saying with today's technology. 20 years from now, I cannot tell you what's going to happen. And I don't want to go into the speculation mode. As of today, AI is augmenting. We should augment what we are doing and not automate and just like AI take the wheel and I'll just sit down and watch it. Think about it in this way. We're not ready yet. And I say today, we're not ready yet to just AI is taking over, humans aren't needed. Let's cut our staff by half and let's start saving money. AI can shrink our queues from, we talk about transcription, de-identification, scoring, etc., reduce our redundant, mundane work. So we can cut people. So we can reinvest that time in things that we struggle with, like interviews, like investigations, like quality checks. So we're moving the pain points, and we aren't ready right now to be like, well, AI helps, AI cuts. Someone mentioned, I go and ChatGPT gives me all the answers. Why do I need a staff of 20 people? This is where we need to maneuver around this. Role evolution is the next thing. It's establishing cross-functional models toward teams, whether it's like, speaking of not having silos, the legal team, the data team, the IT team, and the ethics and governance teams have that model, have those people talk to each other and not silo it each on their own. in order to manage procurement, validation, monitoring, and incident response. Finally, I would say having privacy preserving ways to work. Secure compute enclaves, tiered access controls, and differential privacy, or to be more technical, federated learning for that collaboration. We mentioned something, if the AI model is getting you answers from public information, once you are inputting things that are private information, or PII or anything of that sort, you are relinquishing that information. You're releasing it out in the wild, unless you are working in a sandbox and in a really airtight model. Everything you're putting in, it's out in the wild. So that's something that to be very, very cautious about as we get more and more acquainted and used to AI models helping us. Okay, I'm going to end with my last thing here. What are the questions that leaders looking into implementing AI in criminal justice should ask? And I'm going to nail them down to 5. First thing is validity. Has the model been validated? And if so, where it has been validated, what data, what cohorts, and what performance subgroups? We have to ask about validity first. Second, explainability. If I use AI in my data team, how is that going to trickle? How will my line staff, will my defendants understand that recommendation? So explainability is a big key. Accountability, and that's a huge one in general, and in criminal justice in particular, is when we have a boob, when we have an error, who owns that error? And how can you remediate that? It's a big one. So if you use AI and something went wrong, you can't point your fingers to the AI. Someone will have to be able to own that error. Fourth is monitoring. Keep monitoring that drift or disparity triggers. Who monitors them? Who reviews them? And what do you do when you find out that something is drifting? I would say finally data governance. What data are used? Who can access that? What are you doing to safeguard your data? How do you make sure that your employees, your teammates aren't just uploading PIIs all the way up to the commercial products? And how do you make sure that, how do you trace your data? Is it getting out of your sandbox? Is it getting out of your system? Or is it enclaved in your system? And obviously, how do you audit that? And, we can put all rules in place and say, you cannot use ChatGPT, but who's auditing that? And what do you do if you find something? Finally, I'll finish my remarks by saying AI will not deliver justice. Again, we the people, we do deliver justice. But it can help us deliver more consistent, timely, and reviewable justice. It can assist us in making those decisions. What I would say, my final thought is start with low-risk pilots. Think about data quality drafting things and retroactivity screening, and then publish fairness and validation reports. What's your success rate? What's your false positive? What's your false negative? And commit to continuous monitoring and engage your stakeholders who are involved in that, in the consequence of that decision. Engage them throughout the process to keep having continuous feedback. And with that said, thank you for your time, and I appreciate the opportunity. Back to you, Jonathan.
Ellie, there's a lot there, and I have some questions for you too, but I want to make sure Scott has time. Scott's going to bring some of these more generalizable principles down to sentencing commissions and what's going on at the Kansas Commission and then what's going on at other commissions. So Scott, turn it over to you, and hopefully we'll have a few minutes for questions at the end.
Thank you, Jonathan. So all of these considerations are very good, and I can't tell you, and I'm not going to lie, kind of scary. A lot of stuff to actually consider in the process as far as data governance and that type of thing. My part will be to actually show what things we're doing what other jurisdictions are doing right now. And, you know, based upon your experience, you may or may not think that they are advanced. But we are in that evolution process of what exactly is possible to that. So what the commission is actually doing at this point is we have, as most of you are aware, we have developed the Kansas sentencing application, and that is used statewide to be able to assist practitioners in getting sentencing data into the system, but also then be able to utilize it. It starts at the probation point in which they actually fill out the PSIs on the in the system, which then that information, which 3/4 of it actually is migrates over to the journal entries since they're the same, and then prosecutors and defense attorneys can review those documents and send it on to the judge. One of those situations, we have spent several $100,000 since we actually developed this product in listening to feedback, mostly to those probation officers, and be responsive to them. As a result of that, one of the things that came up was we have issues with, if we're wanting to take that previous PSI, if we have frequent flyers that may have 10, 15, 20 different priors, well, they're going to have a PSI that happened in the past. How can we actually get that information into the PSI so we can save time as a court service officer? And so one of those things was using the technology of OCR, or optical character recognition. And in doing so, it's not AI in and of itself, but it actually allows the computer to understand what characters are it's seeing, and then do something with it, either transport it or do something with that. But it also needed a little bit more than that, because we needed to take that data from the prior PSI and transfer it into the case app. And so about 2 years ago, we attempted this with our vendor, and it was horrible. We had about 30% accuracy. The OCR didn't work very well. It didn't transfer over. It didn't do what we wanted to, and we weren't in a position to roll this out with a 30%, a 70% error rate, essentially. So fast forward a year and a half. AI has got to a point now where we've been able to integrate that. And hopefully what you're going to be able to see here is a video of just exactly what happens with the CSO as to what happens. And so what you'll see here is you can drop your file into the system. It will actually pull up your previous PSI. You scroll down to that criminal history of that individual, adjust it a little bit, and now you can actually copy all of that information that you had before. Oh, wait, there's more. If you have additional criminal history, it allows you to actually grab another section so that we have multiple sections that it will review. Now, once that actually occurs, that OCR process starts, and it starts looking through all of those variables that are on the criminal history worksheet. Once it's finished, it actually then will populate it into the case app. And so we'll see that in this right now in this example. And so there were 14 priors in this particular PSI. You will see now all of these are now automatically put in there. How much time has that saved now? This is one of the processes that we're very proud of, to be able to actually show that, because now we have 14 of those. That video was 1 minute long. How long would it take that CSO to actually have done that manually? So those type of things that we're doing right now, that is very important to be able to, for adoption purposes of the case app, but also it saves those CSOs time that they can now be doing other stuff, like maybe actually supervising offenders. What else do we have on the horizon? We're looking at the format that we use in our annual report that we've moved to dashboards is now, and you can go and check it out on the website. We do have Domo, who is our vendor, has an AI chat feature that we potentially can build into this. Why would we care about that? We already have filters on it and everything else. The AI chat function uses natural language. And so just like we do with Google and just like we do with other GPTs, we could potentially ask that to give me certain demographics for a certain county, for a certain year, and give me a chart. And it will actually develop that for us. And so that's something that we would have to, in this instance, train the model with our database to be able to respond to that type of natural language query. But that is something that is potentially doable. What other things on the distant horizon could be, as a commission, we are responsible for those risk assessment tools that we designate. We could utilize it for that. Utilizing some predictive analytics based upon those domains, the responses, the amount of information that we have. We currently receive data from KBI, OJA, DOC, and we have our own. And this is an opportunity to be able to pull those together and be able to use them in a variety of different ways. So the LSCMI, the WRNA could also, we could utilize those to determine, even for example, the situation of are our thresholds where they need to be? Let's look at the entire frequency of the entire population, and we would be able to better do that with the current technologies that we have. So exciting things as far as that's concerned. I have a huge number of slides here that we are not going to get through, but suffice it to say, there are other people obviously doing other things as well. And our friends at the United States Sentencing Commission, as well as the Virginia Sentencing Commission, allowed us to include the slides in the, and you have those in your materials. But this will give you a flavor of what they're actually doing, boots on the ground, in terms of the applications that they're using. So for Sentencing Commission, the U.S. Sentencing Commission, they have several things that they're working on: text extraction, information synthesis, case identification, and dashboard Q&A prompts. These are, I'll kind of breeze through these a little bit, but what does that mean? Text extraction. Well, just like we do in the federal system, they have court documents, and there are 5 court documents that they utilize to be able to ingest data into their system. And so, as you can see on the slides, those are the 5 that they actually look at. The pre-sentence investigation report, they call it the PSR instead of the PSI, just for nomenclature purposes. But they take these and they place it. They have a Oracle data warehouse that they utilize to put all this information in, and then they utilize that to it is the foundation for their public policy analysis that are used by the commissioners. They produce research projects, infographics, and those type things from all of this data that they've actually pulled into the system. There are means by which they actually get that data into the data warehouse. And so there are several methods here, as you can imagine: manually typing that in, OCR extraction, we talked about OCR a little bit, and then the use of artificial intelligence. One of the benefits then is they can actually go through the data that they have. In this particular example, they're extracting prior offenses from the PSI for criminal history purposes. And so this is a mass of fictitious data that they had for an example. The system can actually go through, pull out the offenses themselves, and then be able to calculate that. They can then further do information with it. This is all through use of a large language model. That's nothing more than a huge amount of data that they've actually fed into a model. And so for purposes of time and probably my competency, I'm not going to go into the DistillBert other than to tell you that it's a natural language processing model that allows them to actually get all of the data in there. And then they train that with all the criminal history that's occurring in the PSI. Like many federal agencies, one of the other uses that they use is they get public comments. So whether it's the SEC, whether it's the United States Sentencing Commission, they get a lot of comments when they're proposing or going to promulgate rules. And so they use AI to synthesize all the data that comes in as far as the public comment. And they can do that be much more easily than trying to keep things in-house because they could use something like ChatGPT to actually do that, because all of that public comment, as you might expect, is actually public information. And so utilizing that, they can reduce the time it takes for them to synthesize that information, and they can develop key points based upon that. And it looks like they're planning on doing an internal type of model as well, or local application. Case identification, in this particular case, they are using algorithms to identify specific features or specific things within the cases. So in their example, they were wanting to know where the offenses were committed in Indian country. And that would allow the algorithms that they're using allow them to then be able to look at those case features and use keywords to be able to determine whether or not whether that actually is that output is actually true. Finally, they have a dashboard as well. Theirs is a little bit more evolved than ours is, but they are in the future looking at trying to overlay that with a chat bot that would allow for, again, natural language processing. The interactive data analyzer, or IDA, as they call it, is something that allows you to go in and look at information from all over the country. And that is their information if you are interested. Moving on to Virginia. Virginia has been working on, they've had the benefit or maybe the pitfall of actually not, they started before all of this actually occurred in looking at some of their data. Currently, they actually are using, Lexis apparently has an AI function called Protege, and they're using that to determine substantially similar offenses. It may sound kind of familiar for us in situations where we get a lot of questions, and Francis and Chris can tell you this. We get a lot of questions about out-of-state, how to apply out-of-state priors. And this is a similar situation that they have on, are these substantially similar offenses, and how do we actually, convert a Virginia to a Kansas or the other way around? And so they're actually currently utilizing that. They're part of the judicial branch, so it's a little bit different situation. Their judicial branch there is worried about governance, very much so. And so this is the only product that they're allowed to use at this point. So that was something that they were frustrated with, but at the same time, they're still able to go ahead and do some of these things. One of the other things, they too are looking at putting a chat bot on their website to be able to provide answers to the public 24/7. But Protege, their staff built a model. They were wanting to look at conformance to the guidelines. We do the same thing. And how could we do that better? Their system is set up so that judges will actually make notes and for departure reasons. And so they were wanting to find out what these departure reasons are, how can we actually do that in such a way that we don't have to manually enter it, because this is the situation that they were faced with, was coding those departure reasons and getting them into a system to make actually sense. So they do have an electronic guideline system that they utilize, but there are certain situations where judges, of course, like to be judges. And so they pretty much will enter things by hand. And so this is an example of how do we deal with that? Are you good at reading judges' handwriting? So they were able to take this information and convert it so that it would actually read handwriting. And those technologies are easily due today. One of the DataSphere summits that we were at that Kimberly actually hosted, I think it was Accenture that was actually talking about the exact same situation, that handwriting can actually be, you can train the models to actually understand, see those characters, those figures, and it will, over time, it will actually understand that. But they actually were doing it pre this time. And if you can imagine thousands of these entries that would actually have to be done, they were using 8 employees to actually do this. And again, when you start doing things like this, then accuracy becomes an issue. So this is what they were trying to solve. And I think that's going to be an important thing going forward, is begin with the end in mind. Just like a lot of other things, we need to determine what it is that we're wanting to solve first, and then be able to go forward. I have a few other slides in here that they have as far as takeaways are concerned that I think is important. I know that we're at our time here at this point, but I think the human review and oversight, I think, is a very important piece of this. We've already had several other speakers talk about that. Yes, we can potentially rely on this, but we have to go about it in such a way. And it's even more important in our situation that we give the right information. It's just a different way of doing things, and hopefully a quicker way. And as time goes on, it's more accurate. I'll kind of leave you with this just to kind of give you an idea. I started looking at this before, and we know that like ChatGPT is at version 5 at this point. Version 3 was text only. And there was 3 terabytes of text that made up the version. To give you a perspective, a King James version of the Bible is about 3 megabytes. So essentially, that's 800,000 King James Bibles made up the amount of data that was in version 3 of ChatGPT. The 4th version added images. So you can imagine how that ballooned. There was a 4.0 version that added audio. And now with version 5, you have full motion video and audio, that it can actually not only understand individual frames, but it can actually assimilate the content within the videos and be able to help you in your quest for whatever you're doing with that. So just in those iterations, we've seen that much of an advancement. And so we have a responsibility to embrace this technology. We have a responsibility to do it in a responsible way. And I think that the opportunities here, though, are fantastic. We have great data. What a great opportunity to be able to do things that we didn't even think we could do possible. And that I think part of the situation is that we still don't know everything that we don't know, just like in many things. Part of the Sam Altman, who is the founder of OpenAI and ChatGPT, said in a recent podcast, a child born today will never be as intelligent as AI is right now. And so he also said that with our smartphones, we essentially have pocket PhDs that are available to us, and that will continue as we go along. The question is, are you all ready? So, Jonathan, back to you.
Thanks, Scott. Scott, we're over time. Rather than my questions, and I've got plenty, are there any questions from the audience? We can take maybe one or two, and then I don't want to interfere with your breaks and everything else that comes after. So is there anything there, Scott? Anybody there who want to ask something?
I think they're tapped out.
Okay, so I'm going to ask one. Okay, so Scott, you mentioned case identification. Okay, there's lots of data in your files. The Sentencing Commission is using it to find similar cases, but it's not just that's not just the Sentencing Commission that wants to know similar cases. Everybody wants to know. If you're a prosecutor, you want to know about similar cases and how judges sentenced. If you're defense lawyers, if you're judges, everybody wants to know that. Do you think that we're a few years away of allowing all of your data or all of the U.S. Sentencing Commission data that includes PSRs, a variety of other things to be tapped into by AI to identify those cases, not just for the commission themselves, but for everybody else with the appropriate precautions for privacy and everything else? Do you think that's sort of one of the places we're going?
I do, and I think that at least Kansas anyway, I'm not sure about the content as far as U.S. Sentencing Commission, but the Kansas is well positioned in this instance for that purpose. There is but one page of the PSI that is actually private information. Everything else is public domain. And so all of the data that we collect, that's why if we look to build something like this, I believe it's going to be much more flexible. We can pivot a little bit easier just because we don't have that PII that is potentially going to be a consideration. So I think it's definitely doable in less time than what you're talking about.
Kimberly, Ellie, thanks for being part of this. Scott, thanks for letting us be part of it. Like I said, there's a lot of questions and a lot to think about.
Thank you.
We'll take a 15-minute break. We'll start back up right at about 10:30, 10:35, folks. Have a good break.